She entered the hall slowly, holding a small file in her hand. Her clothes were very plain, just a simple sweater and old shoes that had clearly seen many years. Her hair was neatly tied, her eyes calm but unsure. As she walked in, people turned to look. Some whispered, others chuckled quietly. A few of the younger contestants even smirked. They thought maybe she was someone's relative, or maybe she had come by mistake. She didn't look like someone who belonged on that big, shiny stage. The hall was packed with bright lights and confident faces. Almost everyone else looked polished and well-practiced, had expensive instruments, perfect hair, and people around them giving last-minute tips. And then there was this woman alone, quiet and with no one cheering her on. She found a chair at the back of the room and sat there, eyes moving nervously toward the stage where the performances were taking place one by one. She didn't say much. Jess held her file close to her chest and waited. Some thought she might be wasting their time. A few gave her half smiles, the kind people give when they don't expect much. Still, she didn't respond to any of it. She simply waited for her turn, checking her fingers from time to time, as if reminding herself they still worked in her mind. She wasn't thinking about the people laughing or judging. She was thinking about the small piano she had back home, the one she had played quietly at night when the world had gone to sleep. She thought of the time she had pressed those keys softly after a long day of work, just to feel peace. She had no formal training, no music teacher, no degree, but she had feeling, she had stories, she had her music. The audition was something she had never imagined joining. She had seen the poster by chance near a grocery store. At first she had walked past it, but something made her stop and turn back. Maybe it was time. Maybe after all these years she could try. She had no idea what would happen, but she knew she would regret it forever if she didn't even try. When her name was finally called, the hall was already tired. Many contestants had come and gone, some good, some not. The judges looked bored. One of them checked their watch as she walked to the stage. She walked slowly, holding her paper in one hand and adjusting her sweater with the other. The stage looked huge, and the piano in the center looked like a mountain. She took a deep breath and moved toward the bench. From the seats, a few giggles were heard. Someone even whispered, "This should be quick." One of the judges raised an eyebrow. Another leaned back in their chair, clearly not expecting anything. Impressive, but the woman didn't look at any of them. She was focused only on the keys in front of her. She sat down and gently touched the piano keys. Her hands looked a bit shaky at first, but she took another deep breath, closed her eyes for a second, and got ready to begin. At that moment, something shifted not in the room but inside her. This wasn't just an audition. This was her moment. A quiet, simple woman, surrounded by doubt, ready to speak in the only language she truly knew, music, and without a single word, she began to play. Long before this audition, her life was filled with noise, but not the musical kind. It was the noise of chores, work, responsibilities, and family needs. She had grown up in a small neighborhood where music was never seen as a real job. Her father worked at a shop, and her mother stayed busy with housework. Life was simple, and so were dreams. People around her mostly talked about getting a stable job or getting married, not about music, art, or dreams. But even as a little girl, she had fallen in love with a broken old piano at her school. Didn't even play all the keys properly. But to her, it sounded like magic. While other kids played outside, she would sneak into the hall just to press those keys. No one noticed. No one taught her. But somehow, her hands began to understand the rhythm. Her ears learned to listen closely, and her heart started storing tunes she made up herself. There were no music classes, no real instruments at home. Day, a neighbor, gifted them a second-hand keyboard. It had missing buttons and a faint buzzing sound, but she loved it like treasure. At night, after helping with dishes or schoolwork, she would sit near the window and play it softly so no one would wake up. Those were the only quiet moments she had, and in those minutes, she felt like the world disappeared. Time passed quickly. Life demanded more from her. She had to drop many things she loved just to help at home, and came work, marriage, children, bills, and never-ending duties. She never complained. She did what she had to do. But deep inside, she still remembered those late-night melodies. Sometimes, while peeling vegetables or folding laundry, her fingers would move in the air as if playing an invisible piano. Years rolled by. She became someone who always cared for others, always stayed in the background. No one really knew that she once dreamed of standing on a stage. Her children grew up, her hair turned gray, and life got quieter again. But her music never left her. She kept her old keyboard safe, even though a few keys stopped working. Sometimes, when she was alone, she would sit on the edge of her bed and just play just for herself. One day, while shopping for groceries, she saw a notice pinned near the exit door. It was a poster about an open piano audition. No age limit, no experience needed, just passion. She read it once, then again. Her hands trembled a little as she looked at the details. She folded that piece of paper and put it in her bag. For 3 days, she didn't mention it to anyone. But at night, her mind kept going back to it. She asked herself many times, what's the point now? I'm too old. People will laugh. But something stronger inside her kept saying, go. Just try. Don't die with music still inside you. So she prepared. Quietly. She cleaned her keyboard, practiced late at night, found the perfect tune that felt like her own story. She didn't expect to win. She didn't even expect to pass. She just wanted to be heard once. Just once. And now, here she was. Sitting on a stage she had only imagined in dreams. No teacher behind her, no fans in the crowd, just her, a piano. And the story she had carried inside her for years, she had waited a lifetime for this moment. And it was finally here, as she sat in front of the grand piano. Everything around her felt quiet even, though the room was still full of people. She could sense the eyes watching her. Some were curious, some confused, and a few were clearly not expecting anything special. A judge looked at her paper, raised an eyebrow, then gave a slow nod. The woman smiled politely and adjusted her seat. Her hands rested gently on her lap as she took a deep breath. Behind her, a few of the other participants whispered. One of them quietly said, "She looks nervous," and someone replied, "I don't think she'll even finish a full piece." But she didn't react. She didn't need to. Wasn't here to impress them. Was here for something much deeper. The piano in front of her was large, polished, and perfect, very different from the old keyboard she used at home. Her fingers moved forward slowly, brushing the keys to feel their smoothness. She closed her eyes for a moment, not to block out the people but to connect with the music inside her. That's when her breathing slowed, her shoulders relaxed, and her fingers found their place. Then she played the first note. It was soft, almost like a whisper. But something about that single note made a few heads turn. It didn't sound shaky, didn't sound forced. It sounded honest. Her hands continued, flowing from one key to the next. The tune started to grow, like a story unfolding with each touch. At first, the judges were simply watching. But within seconds, they began to lean forward. One of them removed their glasses slowly, listening more closely now. The same audience that was laughing minutes ago had gone completely silent. No one expected what they were hearing. The melody wasn't just good, it was full of emotion. There was no show-off playing, no flashy tricks. Just pure feeling. Every note seemed to carry something with it, a memory, a struggle, a hope. The soft parts felt like quiet prayers. The louder moments felt like a voice that had been silent for too long, finally being heard. Some people in the back looked at each other, surprised. One woman even placed her hand over her heart as tears filled her eyes. The music was reaching everyone, not just their ears, but their hearts. The woman never looked up. She kept her eyes mostly on the keys, sometimes closing them. Her body moved slightly with the rhythm, and her fingers danced like they were telling a personal story. She didn't need anyone's approval in that moment. This was hers, her truth, her voice, her way of saying, "I've been here all along." By the time she neared the end, the hall felt completely different. The same people who thought she was just a nobody were now holding their breath. The laughter had turned into respect. The doubt had turned into awe. And as the final notes faded into the air, there was a moment of pure silence. Then someone started clapping. Slowly at first, then louder, and then everyone stood up. The judges looked stunned. One of them stood along with the crowd. The simple woman who had been laughed at just minutes ago had now made an entire room stand on their feet, not with words, but with the power of her music. She stood up from the piano, bowed her head slightly, and walked off the stage the same way she came in, quietly, gently, and humbly. But this time, no one was laughing. No one was whispering. They were all watching her with something else in their eyes, respect, as she walked off the stage. She didn't look left or right. Her head was slightly bowed, her steps slow and calm. She didn't expect applause. She wasn't used to being noticed. But this time, something was different. The sound of clapping filled the hall, and it wasn't stopping. In fact, it was getting louder. Some people were even standing. The same people who had looked at her with doubt just moments ago were now cheering, some with tears in their eyes. One of the judges stood up and gently placed both hands together in a respectful clap. Another whispered something to their team while nodding toward the woman. The energy in the room had completely changed. It was no longer about who looked professional or who wore expensive clothes. It was now about emotion, honesty, and raw talent. She hadn't come with confidence, but she had left with everyone's respect. Backstage, a few other participants looked shocked. One of them said softly, "I didn't expect that at all." Another said she played like the piano was part of her. Even the staff members who were earlier laughing behind the table now stood silently, watching her with a strange mix of surprise and admiration. The woman gave them a soft smile, then went to sit alone in the corner. Just like before, she didn't take out her phone to record anything. She didn't ask anyone how she did. She just sat there quietly, holding her music folder close. She knew deep inside that she had done what she came to do. Whether she won or not didn't matter to her anymore. She had spoken through her music, and for the first time in her life, people had listened. But the performance wasn't just staying inside the hall. Someone in the audience had recorded a video of her while she was playing. That video, without her knowing, was already being shared. People were posting it with captions like, "Don't judge someone by their looks, and talent has no age." Within hours, the clip began spreading across social media. Comments started pouring in, people calling her a miracle, a hidden gem, a reminder of real music. While all this was happening, she had already left the venue. She didn't stay to celebrate or take pictures. She quietly walked to the bus stop, holding her bag and her little folder. She didn't even know that people were already searching for her online. All she knew was that her heart felt full. She had done what she never thought she would dare to do. That night, she sat at her usual spot near the window, her old keyboard in front of her, the same one with the faded buttons and soft buzzing sound. She placed her fingers on it and played the same tune she had played at the audition. But this time, there was something different in her own smile. A tiny light in her eyes that wasn't there before. She didn't care about going viral. She didn't even know what going viral meant. All she cared about was that for one small moment, people had stopped and listened, not to judge, not to laugh, but to feel. And that was enough for her. The next morning, she woke up early, just like always. She made her tea, cleaned the kitchen, and then sat near the window with her notebook. She had no idea that while she was living her simple routine, the world outside was buzzing with her name. The video of her audition was now everywhere. Phones, on social media, even in news clips. People from all over the country were talking about her. But she didn't know any of that. Not yet. At first, only a few people had seen the video. But within hours, it began spreading fast. Viewers were amazed not just by the music, but by the story behind it. The way she walked in quietly, how people laughed at her, and how she left everyone speechless with her playing. The video wasn't just about a performance. It was about not judging people by their looks. It was about hidden dreams. And that touched everyone in the comments section. People wrote things like, "I had tears in my eyes listening to her. She reminded me of my mother who gave up her dreams. She played like she was telling a story through the piano. Many wanted to know her name. Some even started searching online for the simple woman in sweater who played the piano. A few local news channels picked up the video. Soon, reporters were calling the organizers of the audition asking for more details. But she had left quietly, without talking to anyone. Even the organizers didn't know much about her. No social media, no email, not even a full name on her form. Back in her small home, her phone rang. It was her neighbor. "Did you see it?" the neighbor asked, excited. "See what?" she replied, confused. "You're on the internet? Everyone's talking about your piano performance. You were amazing." She was silent for a moment. She didn't even know someone had recorded her. She had only gone there to try to express what had been inside her for years. Fame was never her goal. But now it had come looking for her. Her children called later, surprised and proud. "We had no idea you played like this," one of them said. "You never told us?" She just smiled and said, "I used to play long ago. I didn't think anyone would be interested." More calls started coming in. Local newspapers wanted to interview her. A radio station invited her to talk about her journey. Even a music academy asked if she'd like to teach young students. All of this felt strange to her. It was new, unexpected, and overwhelming. But she stayed calm. She wasn't trying to become a star. All she had ever wanted was to share her music. And now, the world had heard it. Still, she kept her routine the same. She continued waking up early, playing her old keyboard, and cooking simple meals. Even with all the attention, she remained the same kind, quiet, and full of grace. At night, she sat on her bed and watched the video for the first time. She saw herself walk on stage, heard the whispers in the background, and then listened to the music she had played. Her own eyes became wet. Not because of the attention, but because after all those years, she had finally heard her own voice. She whispered softly to herself, "You did it. You didn't give up." Days passed, but the impact of her performance kept growing. People from every corner of the country were sharing her video. It was not just musicians or artists. Ordinary people, teachers, shopkeepers, students, even grandparents were saying how deeply her story touched them. Some said they had lost hope in their own dreams, but after watching her, they wanted to try again. Without trying, she had become an inspiration. She didn't post fancy pictures. She didn't dress up for the cameras. She didn't try to act like someone she was not. That's what made people love her even more. She remained herself, a kind, simple woman who had something beautiful hidden inside her heart for years. And finally, she had let the world hear it. One afternoon, a school principal called her. They asked if she could come and speak to their students.
Ow!
She hesitated at first. She had never spoken to a crowd before. But when she was told that the children wanted to hear her story, not a big speech, she agreed. When she entered the school hall, the students gave her a huge round of applause. Some even stood up. She felt nervous, but when she sat at the school piano and began playing the same tune from the audition, the room went silent just like it had during her performance. The students weren't just hearing music, they were feeling it. After the performance, she spoke gently in her natural voice. She told them how she learned on a broken piano, how she waited years before she got the courage to play in front of others, how she thought it was too late, and how she proved herself wrong. One young girl raised her hand and asked, "How did you not give up?" She smiled and replied, "Because I never stopped loving the piano. Even when life got busy, I still played quietly. It was my way of talking when words didn't help." The children clapped again, but this time it felt deeper. They weren't just clapping for a performance, they were clapping for her honesty, her journey, and the quiet strength she carried. After that, more schools called. Community centers, music clubs, and local events began inviting her. Not because she was famous, but because her story gave people hope. At one event, an elderly man walked up to her with tears in his eyes. He said, "I wanted to become a singer, but I gave up long ago. Watching you reminded me that it's never too late." She didn't see herself as a role model. She didn't even believe she had done anything big, but people did. Her courage had lit a spark in others. People started picking up old hobbies again. Some returned to painting, some began writing poems, and many sat down at dusty pianos or guitars they hadn't touched in years. And while all of this was happening, she continued to live her life the same way. She still went to the same grocery shop, still used the old keyboard in her room, still wore simple clothes and took the bus when needed. Fame didn't change her. In fact, she barely noticed it. She just felt happy that her music had reached others. Her small, quiet voice had finally been heard. And most of all, that people now looked at her not with doubt, not with pity, but with respect. She had spent a lifetime giving to others. Now, without even asking, life was finally giving something back. Some weeks had passed since her audition, but the memory of that moment was still fresh in everyone's mind. People were still talking about her performance. Her video was still being watched, but she had quietly returned to her routine, living a peaceful life away from the spotlight. She was never the type to chase attention. In fact, it made her a little uncomfortable. But whenever someone stopped her on the street and said, "You inspired me," she would simply smile and say, "Thank you." That was enough for her. She didn't need fame. What she had always needed was to be understood. And now, in the most unexpected way, that had finally happened. One morning, she sat at her window with her tea, as she always did. The same old keyboard was still placed near her bed. Its keys were worn out, but to her, they still sounded beautiful. She didn't need anything new. The keyboard had helped her survive the hardest days. It had listened to her pain when no one else could. And now, it had helped her speak to the world. She thought about everything that had happened, how nervous she had felt walking onto that stage. The way people had stared, the quiet giggles, the judgment. But then, she remembered what happened after she started playing. The silence. The shift in the room. The respect in people's eyes. She realized something powerful. She didn't need to prove herself to anyone. All she needed was the courage to show up as she was. That moment changed her, not just because others accepted her, because she accepted herself. Many music schools now wanted her to join as a guest teacher. They offered her money, schedules, and promises. But she chose only one small music center in her town. It was a quiet place where children came to learn on donated instruments. That felt more like home to her. She began teaching there once a week, not for money, but to guide kids who reminded her of her younger self. She showed them how to feel music, not just play it. "Don't worry about being perfect," she would tell them. "Just play with your heart." And they listened. Because her story was not just about talent, it was about never giving up. A young boy once asked her, "Why didn't you become famous before?" She looked at him kindly and said, "Maybe because I wasn't ready. Sometimes life makes you wait. But that doesn't mean the dream is over." She continued playing for small groups, community events, schools, care homes. She didn't want a big stage anymore. She'd already had her moment. Now, she wanted to bring that same feeling to others, even if it was just a few people at a time. Her days were still simple. She cooked, cleaned, walked to the market, played music, and helped others. But now, something was different. She walked with quiet confidence, not loud, not proud, just peaceful. She had nothing to prove, and yet she had proven everything. Her story became more than just a viral video. It became a lesson that age doesn't stop talent. Dreams don't have expiry dates. That one quiet woman with no fame or followers could change lives just by being true to herself. And even though the world might move on to the next story, her music stayed in people's hearts. Gentle, strong, unforgettable. Not because she tried to be great, but because she simply was. The end.